Welcome back to Stewardship Chats here at St. James. We have been embarking on little conversations that came forth from our stewardship event, an evening on the grounds. Last time we pointed to some of the words that came to mind about what do we think of when we hear the word money. And amongst those words that we'd like to sort of address is the word tithe and pledge and what that's about. Stewardship, as we pointed out last time, is not really about fundraising, and it's really not about trying to contrive or convince or manipulate you into making out a pledge card. We would be so grateful if folks would make out a pledge card. And the pledge cards that get filled out do help our financial officers in the church to be able to plan for the coming year with some sense of hope and knowledge about what financial resources will be coming in. But even when we make a budget, from that moment forward, the budget is wrong. Because life changes, because we cannot predict out what really the next year is going to be about. And if there's anything that we've learned in this past year and a half, amongst the many things we've learned, that's one of the things, is that we do not know what the next year will hold. We do not know what your resources are going to be or our resources are going to be. So we just have to make a wild guess. Hopefully, a prayerful, intentional wild guess about what that's going to be. But people have this idea, and it's certainly language that we hear in the Bible Belt, about tithe. It doesn't really get thrown around in Episcopal environs that much, but we do talk about proportional giving. Tithe being a 10%. And I think it's important for all of us to be reminded that the biblical language of tithe had nothing to do, really, with what you would pledge to the church. It had to do with working within a system that, as Buddy pointed out when we gathered, did not have a social net, did not have a system that would catch people when they didn't have enough. Because really, that 10% included money that was going to be given to help shore up the people who couldn't afford their lives. It was given not just to the religious institution to keep it going. Now, we hope and pray that's not what a pledge is either, that it's not just about giving to the church to keep our lights on. We want to keep the lights on. Tommy Shepard made it very clear. He wants you to hear, and I want you to hear, that we need that financial support to continue to move forward with those sort of nuts and bolts pieces, but we also need it in order that we might be and become more fully the people of God that we here at St. James and we in the Episcopal Church and the larger Christian community are called to be and do, not just for this congregation, but for the greater community.
Absolutely. And the absence of the 10% as a hard and fast rule is sort of good news, bad news for us. The good news is we're not fundamentalist, we're not literalist in biblical interpretation. That has a freeing side and an even more challenging side. The truth is, when Jesus was asked by the young ruler how much he needed to give away, Jesus is recorded as having said, "Give all you have to the poor." And as we remember, that shut the guy up pretty quickly and he went away quietly. The truth is, I believe that a tithe is, it's okay. If that works for you, I'd say give 10%. That's great. The truth of the matter is, there are many of us, many among us, who can give a lot more than 10%. And if we can, and that's where the prayer and discernment and genuine conversations with God comes in, then we give more than 10% so that those who can't even begin to approach 10% can give what they can give, and we can all keep the lights on and keep the ministries going and keep people taken care of like we want to. I think it's a good conversation to have. People want to know how to give. They want to know how much to give. I'm all about proportional giving. I think that's a good way of thinking about it. But the point I want to make real quickly is a pledge is a promise-ish. If circumstances change in your life, the church isn't going to sue you for the balance between what you pledged and what you've been able to give. And much more importantly than that, God is going to understand if circumstances change. It's like Elizabeth said, it's the best guess you can give, but it's really important to do. And I believe in pledging, and I hope you will, because it just makes running a church a whole lot easier.
I think within all of that, the idea of contract is the thing that I think often gets us in trouble. And some people even view it as paying their dues. Right? That the pledge is like paying your country club dues or paying your fees to be a member. And that's not what it's about either. And when we start to think of it as that, then we also think of the church as the entity that is supposed to provide some services to me. And that, and in a large church like St. James, one of my experience has been is interesting to have in a large church where we have a staff, where we are fortunate enough to be able to afford a wonderful and vital and competent and really present staff. This is new to me. Lots of competent and wonderful people, but the number of people whose hands are involved in that way, who get paid to do certain things in the church, does not then therefore mean that the rest of us are off the hook. Right? That our pledges are not just about the money that we give, we're also needing to pledge from our energy and our life. You know, they do time and talents surveys. I don't know when the last time was they did that here at St. James, but we're still invited and encouraged to think beyond the money to what it is that we can bring to the table, and to not presume that the staff are just going to, we've paid them with our pledge, that's to pay them, and therefore then everything's just going to be there when we arrive, and that all the ministries are just going to happen. We still have to put our giving a pledge is as we've articulated again, is we are giving to something that we would give our heart to, that we will give our lives to, that means that much to us, and therefore we have to be willing to put our feet on the ground too, and get our hands in the middle of it, and our skin in the game, right? And so our hope and prayer is that when we do that prayerful discernment of filling out the pledge card, is that we're also sort of, whether in writing or not, considering what's that other part of the picture. How am I going to give of that other part of my life that has nothing to do with money? You know, do I just give 10% of my time? Do I give 1% of my time? Do I give no percent? Like, what is it that we're giving? Because he's not just asking really for money.
No.
All of us.
Because one thing you said in the outside session that we had a few weeks ago was that not only our resources, but all of our lives belong to God. We are stewards, because, I mean, that's an important word. We're caretakers. We're not creating what is here. We are stewards of it.
We've been entrusted with it.
We've been entrusted with it. It's a good way of putting it.
And so how do we then
take care of it?
Take care of it and share it.
Right.
Share something that's been given to us.
Right. And I truly believe that we do get a lot from that. If we're up here moving chairs around for a service, I think we get something from that.
Yeah.
I mean, you know,
that's a ministry in and of itself, a willingness to be physically present to do those things, those who can.
Exactly.
And those who can also offer themselves in other ways, in writing notes and saying prayers and being present for the children and
knitting and
doing the outreach work, all of those things.
Absolutely.
So I think that it's important that we sort of not minimize that, but also lift it up and know that we're not asked just to give a little sliver there either. Because if there's anything that we don't have much of, it's time,
Right.
right? But we also don't want church to just be another thing in the list, the checklist.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, money and time are powerful indicators of our values. How we spend our money and how we spend our time probably would tell someone viewing from another planet what is important to us as much as anything in the world.
So part of what we ask is that we all take this time to be intentional about considering all of that.
All of that.
We can talk more about that later too.
And probably will.
We probably will. So we'll be back. Go in peace.